Too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like. That quote has been attributed to Will Smith as well, and a number of other celebrities, most notably anyone who's ever lived and worked in Hollywood. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about basically, what it means to essentially be trapped in a city like Los Angeles, and how sometimes it's okay to give up on your dreams, or at least one idea of what you thought were your dreams, and potentially discover something better and new. Stay tuned. So this one, it really goes out specifically to my friends who live in Los Angeles. I lived in LA for about 15 years, and I loved it, and I still love it, honestly. This whole broadcast today is, not meant to hold any, I guess, skepticism or animosity, or it's not meant to be a criticism of Los Angeles and the LA lifestyle, but rather there's just one very specific element, one really specific pain that I see a lot of my friends that still live there feeling, that I wish I can just take that pain away from them. And that is the feeling that unless they stay in Los Angeles, unless they really just, tough through it and just keep struggling and suffering year after year after year, that somehow if they pack up and move, they're giving up entirely on their dreams. And that the thought of that really hurts them, really, shatters their sense of identity deep down. And hopefully today we can talk about how to get rid of that horrible, awful feeling. So today we're going to talk, this one's going to be kind of a little bit complicated. First, we're going to talk about basically giving up on your dreams and embracing new ones. Then we're going to talk a little bit about moving out of town, but maybe like just going to like the suburbs, close enough to where you can still commute. And then finally, we're going to talk about, what it's like to move really far, but still be working remotely. All right, so point one, let's talk about that Will Rogers quote. And, whenever I hear this, it's just one of my favorite quotes. I think a lot about the sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy, for those of you that didn't go to, economics school or studied philosophy, is the idea that, so for a lot of people, let's say you're investing in stocks. A lot of people feel like they can't sell that stock even if it's going down. They can't sell it until it at least comes back up to where it was when they bought it, right? They would rather, that classic, I guess, flaw, that classic mistake, they'd rather throw good money after bad. They'd rather, wait it out instead of taking a step back and realizing, hey, you know what? If I had accepted the loss on this investment, but then sold it off and bought into something else that's performing much better, in the same amount of time that it took my old stock to get up to here, this new stock might beat that substantially. And so that's kind of one of the first lessons you learn when you trade stocks or get into any kind of serious investing, is how to recognize when your investment maybe isn't working out, and to not be trapped by the sunk cost fallacy and feel like you have to stick it out. You have to, wait for some sort of key moment to occur before you're able to try to jump on another ship. There are new trains leaving every minute, new ships sailing every minute. And sometimes it makes a lot more sense for you to just hop onto another ship rather than stay on the one you're on that very well might be sinking. Sunk cost fallacy. That kind of made me think about this friend of mine, Kristen Addis. I mentioned her recently in a recent video where I'm very grateful that she referred me to her mom to help sell her house, and then her mom ended up referring me to her little brother, and we just recently closed the transaction for him. It's been really nice. So I wanted to use this opportunity to give a little shout out to Kristen and her business, Be My Travel Muse. Kristen is an old friend from high school. So smart. And someone who ended up she got a really fancy university degree, worked in finance or mergers and acquisitions for a while, speaks multiple languages. Incredible woman. And despite how much of a success she was able to become in her 20s, she ultimately kept feeling this sense of discomfort or frustration. And so she ended up quitting. She quit everything, sold everything, and just started traveling. And at the time, being a solo female traveler was something that had just no visibility at all. It was just deemed completely unsafe and unappealing for women to travel alone. And this was before also the era of influencers, really. This was all, about 15 or so years ago. And, so before the word influencer even existed, and before being a travel influencer specifically as kind of a subgroup existed, Kristen just went out and just started writing a blog about her journeys and ended up inspiring hundreds, thousands of young women across the world to try that as well. And then she ended up starting a very successful travel company that basically aids in providing guidance and giving this information, or people who do want to kind of travel as a group, but it's all, like-minded people. And, she never would have discovered this really amazing and incredible part of her life if not for, giving up on the dream of being a high power mergers and acquisitions consultant. I also, I want to talk a little bit about, one of my friends, Brandon, who, he knew he had this itch. He had this, there was just something he was feeling unfulfilled. I guess maybe a lot of my millennial friends had quarter life crises in our mid to late 20s. And, there was, he kind of decided that he wanted to see the world, and he wasn't sure. He didn't come from money, and he didn't have a big 6-figure job with lots of savings. So he got a job as a flight attendant and traveled the world for many years. I believe he's still working as a travel attendant or a flight attendant. But on his travels, he ended up meeting a girl from Japan, falling in love. And now this guy has a beautiful family in Japan. And he never would have discovered any of that if he hadn't decided, you know what, maybe Orange County isn't the entire world. Maybe I just need to see a little bit more of it before I decide where I belong. Lastly, I want to talk about my friend Chris Nunari, who, very close story to me. He, one of my good friends in LA, worked in the music industry, still works in the music industry. And during the pandemic, he moved back home to Ohio. His brother owns some real estate out there, and Chris was helping to manage it, and, ended up buying a little income property for himself, and just discovered a real passion for it. So he got his real estate license, and Chris helped me buy my first few investment properties in Ohio. And he and I still keep in touch and chat all the time. And so, again, I think there's nothing quite so insulting, or adds insult to injury, as not just moving out of the city, but moving back home. So embarrassing, so shameful, so awful. But there is so much benefit to reconvening with your roots and finding all the new opportunities and inspirations that may come from that. All right, so let's talk about kind of like the next category, which is moving out of town. And again, I'm going to focus this conversation on Los Angeles, but this really applies to pretty much any city in America. There is such thing as moving out of town, but into the suburbs and staying close enough to be able to commute. And, commuting isn't just for those office drones that have to sit in their cars all day on the 10 freeway. There's a lot of creative people, or people that I guess nowadays we would call them remote workers, who, only need to be able to come into town every once in a while. And I mean, that's an ideal situation for them. So I pulled up a video here. This is Snoop Dogg's house in Diamond Bar. So I grew up a little bit in Diamond Bar, and I actually have friends that grew up, playing Little League with Snoop's kids, and Snoop was actually a coach, I think, of the Little League team. And I heard these lovely stories about people, like he was genuinely a great coach, and they would go back to his house afterwards, treat everybody to snacks and juice or whatever. He got to live this idyllic suburban regular dad lifestyle amidst also being one of the most famous and recognizable, most iconic people in the world. So if Snoop Dogg can do it, really anyone can. And then there's a bunch of other examples too. I think Rob Lowe, famous TV and movie actor, lives in Santa Barbara, and he made that decision before he became super famous. He just knew as soon as he kind of checked his heart and realized that for his lifestyle, he wanted to really focus on being a dad, and really wanted to have a safe and comfortable place for his family, far away from all that Hollywood and Los Angeles BS. And that is worked out great for him. And this isn't just for the people who are like mega wealthy and mega famous either. I want to talk not just about, I guess, being willing to commute, but also being willing to diversify your career. I had this in one of my first jobs working in a restaurant. There was a bartender named Dean, who, he was, I think, about in his 40s at the time. And, incredible bartender. But also, he was a DJ and an actor, and just this really just incredible, big, boisterous guy, just big personality. Everybody loved him at the bar. And he was, getting consistent work in acting. One of my other coworkers at one point came to me, and he said, who also wanted to be an actor, a server, bartender, wanted to be an actor. He said, man, when I first got here and I saw Dean, I thought, man, I don't want to turn out like that. I don't want to be in my 40s still working at a bar. I want to be, a mega millionaire, or, big famous rock star, or big movie star. But the more time I've spent here, and the more time I've seen all the other, wait staff and bartenders come and go, all the actors come and go, the more I started to realize, what? Dean is actually my hero. Dean has a family and a house, beautiful kids, beautiful wife. And he still does what he loves. He doesn't act full time, but everything he does with gusto and joy and creative passion, and he works consistently. He's got credits. He's got a really great reel. Dean is kind of like a big guy, sort of shaved head. He has played a cop in probably almost every TV show you can think of that has a cop. He just has that look. And, it's a good life. It's a good life. And, and he's still working at it. He's still, going out for those big auditions, and still with that big dream. one of the things that about Hollywood that is, I guess, very unfair compared to a lot of other careers is that kind of the older you get as a man in the industry, the more you're able to actually get more work. The kind of some of the there's sort of like this like in your 20s and 30s, there's like way too many young men trying to become actors. But then as soon as your hair starts to go gray or you start to bald or something like that, there just isn't as much competition. And you realize that there's actually a lot of roles for that look of person. And so if you literally just stick it out and just kind of war of attrition, wait for everybody else to leave the industry, believe it or not, that actually is a potential path to success. Dean, by the way, ended up moving down to Atlanta, which kind of gets me to my next point. So the next point is, don't forget that you can move far, but still do what you love somewhere else. There's the film industry, again, just kind of sticking with this one industry, but this applies to so many different industries and so many different cities. So in the film business, there is a lot of work to be had in Atlanta. And that's where Dean and his family moved to, where they could afford a bigger house and be able to, still be able to get consistent work, and just everything was just a far less stressful and difficult than trying to stick it out in LA, especially during the pandemic. I've had friends that moved up to Vancouver. Vancouver is a place that is a pretty incredible hub of film activity. I've had friends that, this isn't necessarily, moving out of the city, but just moving to a place like New York where, they don't shoot as many movies in New York, but they do a lot of advertising work. So a lot of the biggest like marketing and advertising companies are there. And, you can find pretty steady work just doing, TV commercials there. So, again, like sticking, even if you were to not change industries, there can still be opportunities for you in other places. Finally, I'm going to talk about remote work. And, it's so funny how remote work, this was, I forget when this book came out. Oh, it says here, 2009. So in 2009, when the 4-Hour Work Week came out, it was considered insane to leave your cushy day job and try to figure out how to work remote. For those who haven't read this incredible business and lifestyle book by Timothy Ferriss, this book kind of came out around the time that I graduated from college, and so many of my friends read it and were inspired by it. And, this was basically it was like one of the first really, I don't know if you'd call it viral. We didn't use the word viral back then, but it was just a very, very popular, very trendy thing to be talking about. How do I automate? How do I get virtual assistants? How do I try to work from home and then eventually transition from just working from home to actually leaving the state or leaving the country to cut my living expenses down substantially, such that I don't have to worry so much about work. I don't have to worry so much about income, and I can really just focus on living and enjoying my life. And in this case, focus on creative exploits like writing a best-selling book that ended up changing Timothy Ferriss's life. And he like would he have had the time and energy and creative ability to write a book like this, a life-changing book like this, if he was still working that 9 to 5? Probably not. At least if you follow his own words, his own story of himself, like he needed to first give himself the opportunity to be free, to find himself, to engage in all sorts of activities, like he didn't just, I don't know, I guess like just travel around and party. He engaged in new sports, new hobbies, new creative pursuits of all different kinds, and finally settled on just kind of writing it all down. And that's now what he's most famous for. But lots of people can find additional encouragement and inspiration by moving, especially when it comes to something like writing, performance, artwork, all kinds of creativity. I have a number of friends that were all writers, doing the thing, working hard, trying to go up the ladder in Los Angeles, who ended up, moving back. The pandemic was a big, I guess, motivation point or breaking point, perhaps, that accelerated a lot of the trends that were already being kind of talked about in the 4-hour work week. Like what used to be an outlier of an idea is now the mainstream, and we're trying to kind of like, or I guess corporations are trying to kind of pull it back to kind of where it was before. So, I don't need to pitch to you guys the value of figuring out ways to do what you do, but do it remotely, and also consider doing it somewhere else. I mean, how many famous authors basically started their careers by just writing a book about going on a trip and all the amazing adventures they went on, all the romances they had, or at least, fantasized about having while they were traveling in these beautiful places. And then they wrote it all down in a beautiful idyllic version of it. And it sold. It sold really well because it's a dream that lots of people have, right? I want to talk about, lastly, just kind of bringing this all back to real estate. One of my friends, Harley Green, is a incredible real estate kind of development investment coach, just a phenomenal, I guess, thinker and voice in this industry. And, Harley's story, and I may kind of butcher some of the fine details, but the overall idea, I think, should come across. So he and his family, when they bought their first condo, and then when it came time to kind of move from a 1-bedroom condo to a 2-bedroom condo, they just had this idea: hey, why don't we keep the first condo and just rent it out, and then use that income to help us buy the second condo. And there are some sacrifices when you do that. This is not without sacrifice, especially with like small condos when you're starting out. It can be very difficult to make any kind of substantial profit off of renting out a condo, especially in Southern California. But they did it. The nature of their work, he worked a very steady 9-to-5 programming job, while his wife, I think she was working at real estate at the time. She ended up working in real estate later. I forget if she was in real estate, earlier on. But whether it's real estate or certain other like professions, like we all met in LA, so maybe she's doing an LA thing. Some careers pay like a really steady W-2 job, and other careers give little kind of pops and bursts of money. With real estate, it's very easy to just all of a sudden you just kind of have an extra 20 grand, in your pocket. And if you're able to, kind of keep the lights on and keep a roof over your head in the meantime, and then all of a sudden you've got this big extra money, then you start to really think about investing. And so, what they did is every time they got those little pops of money, they were able to put that as a down payment and then use the rental income of the previous place and Harley's, good like 9-to-5 W-2 salary to apply for a loan to be able to get the next place. And then the next place and the next place and the next place. They moved a few condos, a townhome, small house, bigger house. And then somehow at exactly the right time, I think this is in 2021, they were able to sell all of it and do a 1031 exchange. That's a tax-free exchange into a vacation home over in the Carolinas. I think 2 of them actually, and now those are making enough money, and they cost little enough to be able to run and keep going, that they are making a fairly good living off of all that income. And basically all they had to do was just kind of a little adjustment in the strategy of how they bought houses, ended up affording them kind of building up all this equity to be able to completely transform their lives. And it's like that plus some of the other real estate investments and things that they built along the way. You can look up Harley yourself for his incredible virtual assistant um, consulting company called Workergenics, or look him up as an investment or real estate coach and or consultant or advisor. He realized at one point, we could sit here and just keep building this and building this and building this and building this, and maybe someday in like 10 years, 20 years or whatever, we become super duper wealthy and all that. But that wasn't really their dream. He didn't want to have all these riches when his kids were already, grown up and out of the house. He wanted to experience and enjoy the freedom and the financial flexibility today. And so from their perspective, the best way to do that was they kind of sold a bunch of their things and the house that they were living in at the time and started traveling the world. And those that money from the income properties has goes a lot further in Central America, or maybe at some point they end up in Southeast Asia, or just travel the world and just give his kids, give his family the sort of lifestyle that most people can only dream of. Get to really see and experience just the maximum amount of world possible. And I don't want to like overplay Harley here, and also I just want to say like his wife Adrienne, phenomenal real estate agent, brilliant woman herself, and created a really successful real estate practice where they ended up settling for a few years in Chattanooga. And so I kind of followed their story for a while from a distance, and talked to them a bit over the years, and just have continued. I've continued to learn a lot from them and from their example. And I feel like a lot of us, if we really stop and really think about what really matters to us, and I guess this is the theme of this entire video, is not just figuring out, I guess, from like a financial strategy perspective, or from a purely career perspective, how to get ahead. It's really the whole theme of this video is taking a step back and assessing, okay, what really matters? What are some different ways that I can achieve the things that I want? And what are the beliefs and the fears and the shames or guilts that are holding me back, they're not really real. Like that feeling that, oh, if I leave LA and move back home, I'm just a quitter and a failure and a loser, and I'll do anything to avoid that. No, that's none of that is real. None of that needs to hold you back. So to sum up, it is okay to give up on your dreams, because you can always come up with new dreams, or stick with that dream, but just maybe from a little bit of a distance, and in doing so get a lot more out of it. Or find yourself a dream that gives you the freedom and flexibility to live whatever life you want, wherever you want. All right, again, my name is Richard Wayland, owner and broker of the Imagination Brokerage. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be doing these live streams every Wednesday at 5 p.m. from now on. Find me on all the socials. Right now we are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm trying to get LinkedIn set up, and Instagram, and like a few other platforms. But anyway, for now, whatever platform you're watching this on, thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe. And if you are thinking about buying or selling any real estate in Southern California or investing anywhere in the country, please send me a message. Find me on imaginationbroker.com and all the socials at the Imagination Brokerage. Thank you.